Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Today I'll be um, listing my top 5 books of 2025. I hope to kind of show the kind of books that have, I would say, changed my perspective on things, or at least brought me some enjoyability. I will have about uh, 3 honorable mentions, and then we'll get into the top 5. Uh, I'd say that the honorable mentions are more about um, pure enjoyment than anything, and then the top 5 are kind of things that I might have not enjoyed as much, but they at least were deeply impactful to a point where I wanted to kind of highlight them. Um, I read about 20 to 25 books this year, which I think is quite a good number. Um, I think that reflects how I kind of was reading books to challenge me, but also allowing myself some kind of leisurely reading, which I view as both important, equally important, even. So, yeah, um, with that being said, let's get on to our first honorable mention. That is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Um, I I think I have talked about this book before. I It was the type of thing where you have all these kind of expectations about it. There's this whole kind of vibe that people um, will kind of go on and on about this book. I think you should just read it. I had those same thoughts, and then I just needed a book that I thought would be kind of relatively um, easy to get through, and also would be long, so I could just have something to read. And and then I just kind of read it in like quite a short time because the plot and the characters were just too compelling. And not in like a likable sense, but in an intriguing sense. Um, I especially I was reading and I became quite interested in nature this year. I wouldn't say so much in the kind of classics, philology, um, ancient Greek sense, but still that it's so like prevalent to his own perspective. So the kind of commentary that goes through this book of this kind of how kind of um, this how the ancient Greek kind of perspective has become so important in Western European culture, that this kind of tension between the kind of the Dionysian, the ritual, the brutality, the emotion, the erotic of ancient Greek next to the kind of quote unquote civilized European world, or what Nietzsche would call it, the kind of life negated Western civilization. And yeah, I just maybe I also just really like the characters and the plot, and I think Donna Tartt is a wonderful novel writer and craftswoman. Really, really good. Uh, Next honorable mention we have Murakami's Colorless Tsukuru Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage. Uh, I really liked this book for a kind of personal sense. I read it during my in the middle of 2 uni semesters, so I was kind of had a lot more free time, and I would go to my favorite park and I'd read like 40 or 30 pages of this every day. And through that time, I think I became it was almost like it was like became part of my life. And anyway, with this book, you become so entrenched in Sukuru, the main protagonist's perspective, um, and he kind of and you the great thing about this book is you kind of at the start and in the middle you become kind of his presumptions become your presumptions because you're looking through his point of view, and his retellings of events become your truth. And then as you kind of begin interacting with the actual characters that he has this very internal set vision of, reality kind of becomes Tolkien and this kind of misty, fantastical view of things and almost nihilistic view of things kind of comes to light. And in the end, you kind of come to the conclusion that maybe this person that I've been so entrenched in not only might be not exactly retelling events as they are, he might not even recognize the events as they are. Uh, and it kind of comes back into this whole thing about how um, people who have who suffer with anxiety and stuff uh, kind of think of themselves as being, for lack of a better term, the center of things or the center of attention, where everyone's looking at you, all these eyes are on you and stuff, and that you are kind of this kind of sense of shame and guilt and embarrassment for lots of people when that isn't really the case, and people have their own lives and their own kind of worries. But yeah, it this is a deeply kind of uh, personal book, and I do love it. I obviously have my own disagreements and reluctance with uh, and a slight annoyance with Murakami, but I've kind of talked about that at length, and I don't want to kind of keep talking about it. But yes, I found this to be a lot better, honestly, than the other book I read by him, Norwegian Wood, which I read a couple years ago. I think that might be because the main characters are a lot older. But yeah, very good book. I would recommend it, honestly. Yeah. Okay, the final honorable mention we have is William Burroughs' Junkie. I got this after learning lots about Burroughs, and it's a haunting cover. Um, I became kind of interested in the whole American beat, um, you know, psychedelic countercultural movement this year, and Burroughs is obviously at the center point of this. He was affiliated with many of the, absolute musical giants at the time, and I wanted to kind of become. I was more kind of focused on his early stuff, which was Junkie, Queer, and then Naked Lunch. Um, and so yeah, I decided to kind of read Junkie first. I think I've said this in many videos. I don't much like saying junkie as someone who has been fortunate enough to not deal with substance abuse, but and it's very it feels pretty rough. I don't know. But yeah, this book is pretty gnarly. It's pretty brutal. It it shows off his kind of anthropological training, where it's these kind of super super drawn back, like just sharp uh vignettes of his life. Well, it's it's very kind of up. It's obviously based off him, but there are some kind of other elements to it. But yeah, it's basically this person's life, but if it was only told through and around, drugs, right? And he kind of like states what it is, what addiction is. It's literally a way of life, and it kind of follows him around everywhere, or he follows it around everywhere. And every time he gets clean, you know, it's almost like the kind of the narrative like stops and there's like a time jump, and then you go back to when he kind of sadly and inevitably goes back. And yeah, it's kind of puts into perspective that Burroughs like never fully got clean throughout his life. And yeah, it was really I read it in a couple days, and it was a really kind of wild uh ride, which also made me slightly uncomfortable. But yeah, I hope to explore Burroughs a little bit more in the future, but I might take a break from Burroughs a little bit. But yeah, really, really good book. If you're interested in Burroughs, I would recommend starting with this. It's kind of almost uncomfortably drawn back as opposed to like Naked Lunch. It is just him describing events, and this narrator just comes off as a kind of just almost otherworldly in terms of coldness. But yeah, okay, on to the top five. The first one I've got is, I mean, it should be number one, but this is kind of in no apparent order. It's Judith Butler's Gender Trouble. I'd read quite a bit of this before this year, but I did a class in feminist theory and feminist philosophy, I should say, and obviously Butler is at the forefront. And I read a lot more of this and some of Bodies of Matter, which I hope to actually read this year, but and some other stuff as well of her later works. But I found this to be, I mean, I don't know what to say about this. I think, I think I'll just, if you're interested in kind of, if you're interested in gender, um, I would not start with this. If you're interested in Butler or gender, I would not start with this. I would start with some of their later work, which is a lot more kind of, um, I kind of view it like this, where Butler had to write Gender Trouble um, in order to write later books, um, which uh, are able to state her theory of performativity and gender performativity a bit more clearly. Um, I mean, I feel like Butler's whole kind of literary career and philosophical career has been kind of running away from the, I would say, the kind of misinterpretations of this book. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're interested in Butler, you should probably read this. But yeah, uh, I don't know if I want to kind of go into detail. I could talk about for hours, but one reflection I have is I think it became a lot more apparent to me this year that my way of being or how I want to be, my aspiration of being a kind of um, is a kind of fluidity in a sense where and I think that is it's almost like a that's almost like inherent in terms of like I guess yeah my aspiration would be to become accustomed and at home in fluidity and movement where I can kind of just let myself go. And where Butler comes into this is Butler kind of talks about how gender is a stylized repetition of acts, and stylized as in we're just imitating and parodying off the things we already know, and it's a continuous, right? Which is opposed to like Simone de Beauvoir, who would say it's a becoming, so you become, there's an end point, whereas Butler would say it's a continuous thing. And yeah, I think that kind of paved the way for my own kind of ontological revelation, or whatever you would like to call it, my own new perspective. So yeah, I could talk about Butler for ages, but okay. Next one we've got, which I can't believe this was this year, is um, Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. I read this I'd say earlier on in the year. I think I put this down. I've talked about this a lot. I love how poetic it is. Going back to fluidity, I love the kind of stream and the waves of language that Woolf is able to achieve here. Um, I love how Woolf kind of in this book talks to and expands on the quietness in conversations and the kind of gaps of silence. Um, there are not gaps of silence in this book. There are these kind of incredible rivers of thoughts uh, and revelations which come with those gaps of silence. And um, yeah, I thought it was really good. A personal thing for me with this book is that it made me a more confident reader. This is one of the hardest books I've had to read. It's pretty hard, but I finished it, and I read it, a little bit at a time, and I just let it wash over me. And yeah, it was good, really good book. Obviously, to the Lighthouse. The next one I've got I read recently, and I've actually talked about quite a lot. but I'm happy to again. It's Translating Myself and Others by Jhumpa Lahiri. I've talked about this a lot, um, but it's a series of essays which deals with Jhumpa Lahiri kind of uh, being a translator of English to Italian and Italian to English, and how, um, and it's basically these kind of meditations on translation itself and how kind of to translate is to kind of transport yourself into another world, and that when two books are translated from one language to another, uh, those are two separate books. There becomes two separate books. But yeah, it also just kind of I just thought it was really good essays, really easy to read. I would really recommend. Some of these books I'm saying took me a long time and they're really hard. This did not take me a long time. This was really good to read. Um, it introduces to both kind of contemporary Italian authors, but um, also just super important Italian authors like Calvino and Ovid and stuff like that. Um, it made me want to read all those guys. It made me want to move to Italy. But yeah, beautiful book. I would like to read some of her fiction now, just because these essays were so personal. Um, yeah, and I like how in the last essay she talks about how, when she was translating Ovid's Metamorphosis, uh, it kind of made her view certain events through an Ovidian type of thing, and I think that's true. I think after I read Joyce, I started viewing things through Joyce, and after I read Freud, I started uh, through Freud and then through Butler, and I started, you start viewing things through these people, and sometimes it takes a combination of these authors to create your own perspective, right? Okay, and then final two books we've got. I can say both of them. We've got Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man and Dubliners. So two James Joyce. Um, I'll start with uh, I'll start with Dubliners because I read Dubliners first. Uh, I've talked about this at length, but um, these are wonderful short stories which I think should be read. Uh, I think they should be read as a whole. I think they should be read in order. They kind of piece this melancholic, frustrating, deeply personal Joyce vision of Dublin, and are kind of able to um, present a very particular feeling about origins and belonging, and how how kind of we come to think about where we belong. And yeah, this is a total kind of um, exploration of Ireland and Dublin at that time, and it's done from someone who seems to, adore Ireland in a certain sense and also resent it in a certain sense. I guess that's my kind of perspective. Um, it's a really emotional book, short stories, I should say. Next one we have, which I this one took me a while. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. I'd say this is almost like it's almost like an expansion of what he did in Dubliners, where um, this is kind of like, Stefan Dedalus in this book is kind of Joyce, and is kind of artists everywhere who are kind of for lack of a better term, like kind of sometimes bogged down by the kind of by their origins, and by the kind of it's about kind of, nationality, religion, patriotism, all of these things kind of weighing down on this artist. And yeah, it's I've talked about this as well, but this was a hard one for sure, but it was lovely to read, and it gave me new perspective on many things. Um, I think it honestly gave me lots of gratitude for how my kind of creative pursuits or artistic pursuits have been kind of rather than kind of downtrodden or made fun of or made light of, they've been kind of celebrated. So um, yeah, with that, those are my top 5 books of 2025. Um, thanks so much for listening.